All right, friends, here we go with Chapter 17 of How to Steal a Dog. I knew my day was going to be bad when Kirby Price called me a dirtbag in gym and everybody laughed. Even Luann, I saw her. And then it got worse. When Mama got off work that night, the car wouldn't start. She turned the key and there was just one click and then nothing. Well, that's just great, she said, pounding her fist on the steering wheel. Me and Toby looked at each other, but we both knew better than to say anything. She turned the key again. Click. She flopped back against the seat and said a bad word. Toby giggled and I poked him to be quiet. My life just goes from bad to worse, Mama said. And she sat there staring out the window at the Chinese restaurant across the street. A family came out. A real family, a mom, a dad, 2 kids. They broke open their fortune cookies, read their fortunes out loud while they walked to their car. They all smiled and laughed and acted like they had the best life in the world. When they drove by us, they were still laughing. They didn't even look at us sitting in our car that wouldn't start. I wished I was one of those kids, eating my fortune cookie and laughing with my family. Mama turned the key again. Click. I stared out the window, praying that this old car would start. And then I couldn't believe my eyes. There was Mookie, pedaling his bike toward us. I ducked down real quick and motioned for Toby to get down too. Naturally, he had to go, "What?" and sit there looking all stupid. I grabbed his t-shirt and I pulled him down. Then I peered out the window. Mookie had gone past us and disappeared around the corner. Mama turned the key again. Click. I finally got up the courage to say, "What are we going to do now, Mama?" I held my breath, hoping she wasn't going to yell at me, because I didn't need that after all the dirtbag stuff that happened at school today. Mama shook her head and let out a big whoosh of a sigh that blew her hair up and off her forehead. She turned the key again. Click. "Guess we're sleeping here tonight," she said. I looked around us at all the places where people could see us. There was the Chinese restaurant, the Quick Mart, the gas station. "What if somebody sees us?" I said. "You all go over there to that gas station and wash up," Mama said. "I'm going to go into the Quickie Mart and I'll get us something to eat." I watched her run across the street. Her jeans were dragging on the ground. "What if somebody sees us?" I hollered out the window, but Mama didn't even turn around. The next morning, Mama walked over to the coffee shop to get her friend Patsy to drive me and Toby to school. I'd like to have died when I saw Patsy pull up beside our car, roll down her window, and say, "Come on, y'all." She had a big poofy hairdo that stuck all the way up on top of her head and these ugly sparking earrings, and she had a cigarette in her mouth. Her car was rustier than ours with bumper stickers all over the back, saying things like, "My other car's a broom," and "Honk if you love Jesus," and stuff like that. I climbed in the back seat and slouched down as low as I could. "Please don't let anybody see me," I prayed. "Please don't let anybody see me, especially Kirby Price." Just before we got to school, Patsy said, "Look at that." Me and Toby looked where she was pointing. There was Mookie, pedaling alongside of the road on that rusty old bike of his with that little American flag waving in the breeze. "I've seen that man all over town," Patsy said. "He sure looks happy, don't he?" I slouched back down in the seat and turned my face away from the window. I sure wish Mookie would get on out of Darby instead of hanging around like he always was. "Imagine being that happy when all you've got in the world is that beat-up old bicycle," Patsy said. When we passed him, she waved out the window and hollered, "Hey!" and Mookie tipped his hat. After school, me and Toby had to walk back to the car. It took forever, and Toby kept griping and hollering, "Wait up, Georgina!" Like he kept asking, Then he kept asking, "When are we gonna take Willie back to Carmela's?" I pretended like I didn't hear him. Finally, he grabbed my backpack and he yanked. "I said, when are we gonna take Willie back to Carmela's?" I whirled around to face him. "I don't know, Toby, okay?" I started off up the sidewalk again, and Toby trotted along beside me. "She's looking for him, Georgina," he said. "I know." "I bet Willie wants to go home." "I know." "Maybe Carmela has some money now. Maybe Gertie gave her some." I stopped. "Look, Toby," I said, "I've got to figure this out, okay? We went to all this trouble to steal that dog, so we might as well get some money out of it, right?" Toby shrugged. "I guess." "What do you mean, you guess?" I said. "That's the whole reason we got ourselves into this mess in the first place." "What mess?" I started walking again, but Toby grabbed my arm. "What mess, Georgina?" he said. "Are we in trouble?" "No, we're not in trouble." "Then what mess?" "Look, Toby," I said, "Carmela might not even get any money. If we take Willie back now, we probably won't get anything. But if we wait much longer, well, I don't know." "What'll happen if we wait much longer?" Toby said. "Georgina, is Carmela going to call the police, you think?" No. What if she does? So maybe we'll get arrested. We're kind of like kidnappers, Toby said. We are not. Well, we're dog nappers then. Toby's face was puckering up like he was going to cry. What if we have to go to jail, he said. Ah, shut up, Toby. There's no such thing as dog nappers. Man, I hated it when Toby started thinking up stuff that I should have thought of. Maybe we were dog nappers and we could go to jail. I pictured Willie's face on a milk carton. His head cocked, his cute little ears perked up. Have you seen me? It would say underneath his picture, and Carmela would keep sitting there at the kitchen table with her Cheerios, looking at Willie and crying her eyes out. And what about Willie? Toby interrupted my thoughts. Think about him, he said. I bet he's sadder than anybody. Be quiet, Toby, I said. And I sure didn't need Toby heaping more bad feelings on top of me like this. Neither one of us said another word as we made our way along Jackson Road toward the car. Toby kept on finding things on the ground and saying, Hey, look what I found! A quarter, a lighter, a pencil. Then, right before we got to the car, we came to one of those lost dog signs with Willie's cute little face smiling out at us. I shut my eyes until we were past it. I could still feel that picture looking at me. When we finally saw the car, Toby darted ahead. Hey, look at that, he said, pointing to the ground. I looked down at a shiny quarter nestled in the sandy roadside next to our car, and then I'd noticed something else. Tracks in the sand. Tire tracks. Bicycle tire tracks. But Toby didn't seem to notice. He just grabbed that quarter like it was made of gold. I shuffled my feet in the sand, making those tire tracks disappear. Then I unlocked the door and climbed in the back seat. Me and Toby stayed in the car all afternoon, eating graham crackers with jelly, playing crazy eights. Toby kept asking me when we were going to take Willie back to Carmela, but I didn't even answer him. I knew that was making him mad as all get out, but too bad. I didn't want to talk about Willie or Carmela. I didn't even want to think about Willie and Carmela. I had this bad feeling that I had really gotten myself into a mess. And it seemed like everything I did stirred that mess up more. Stirred it up so much, it was starting to stink. Chapter 18. By the time Mama got back to the car that night, Toby was asleep and I was finishing my math homework. Hey, Mama said, tossing her purse on the seat and handing me a blueberry muffin. Me and Toby stayed here all afternoon like you told us to, I said, peeling the paper from the muffin and taking a bite. It was dry and crumbly, but it tasted good. I know this is hard on you all, Georgina, Mama said. I promise, things are going to get better soon. You're right, I said in my head. I've heard that before. But out loud, I said, have you got enough money saved up yet? Mama sighed. Well, I was doing real good until this darn car decided to up and die on us. I swear when it rains, it pours. What are we going to do now? I said. She dug through her purse and pulled her car keys out. I'm going to try to find somebody who can fix this car for cheap, she said. Patsy's nephew might take a look at it tomorrow. She put her key in the ignition and turned it. But this time, instead of that click sound we'd been hearing, the engine whirred and started up with a roar. Mama jerked her head around and grinned at me. Toby sat up and rubbed his eyes. It started, she squealed. What happened, he said. I pumped my fist in the air and let out a whoop. Mama clasped her hands together like she was praying and hollered up at the ceiling, Hallelujah! The car started, Toby said. Me and Mama nodded at him, and then we all slapped each other high fives. Mama put the car in gear and pulled out onto the street. Let's go find us a place to spend the night before our luck runs out and this thing dies again. We drove through the streets of Derby, Mama humming, Toby snoozing, and me wrestling with my crazy thoughts. First there was Willie, tied up on that rotten old porch instead of curled up next to Carmela. Then there was Carmela, missing her little dog more than anything. And then there was Mookie. How come he kept popping into my swirling thoughts? I wasn't sure, but something about those bicycle tracks next to the car, and then this broken down car starting up like it did, got me to thinking about Mookie. Mostly he just seemed like a crazy old man, but sometimes I wondered if he wasn't as crazy as he seemed. What do you think Georgina's thinking right there? There were bicycle tracks by their car. The car started up right away, and Mookie had just got done talking to her about how he just really likes to work by doing things for people who need help. I wonder if he had just decided to fix their car on the side of the road, maybe not even knowing it was Georgina's family's car. We spent that night on a dark, quiet street, not far from Whitmore Road, which made me think so much about Carmela that I didn't sleep too good. I kept picturing her in my mind, tossing and turning in her bed. She'd probably get up a few times and make sure that little doggy door was open just in case Willie came back that night. But maybe she'd shine her flashlight up and down the street, whistling and calling his name. She might even think she heard him barking way off in the woods again and drive her car in that direction, hollering his name out the window. Then she'd come back home all alone and sit on the couch with one of his chewed-up toys on her lap. When my mind started wandering over to that old house where little Willie was curled up on that dirty, falling-apart porch, I sat up in the back seat and looked out the window at the moths fluttering around a nearby streetlight. The air smelled sweet like honeysuckle. I could hear the sound of a creek nearby, that even, ripply sound of water, and every now and then a bullfrog would croak. Those noises reminded me of the time Luann and I camped out in her backyard. We had shined our flashlights up on the ceiling of the tent and told each other secrets. What boys we liked, how many kids we wanted, when we got married, stuff like that. Then Luann said we had to tell each other the worst thing we had ever done. She told me how one time her mom had knitted her a sweater and she hated it so much she threw it in the garbage and told her mom she left it on the school bus. When it was my turn, I told Luann about the time I wrote a bad word on my desk at school, and when the teacher saw it, she hollered at me, and I told her that Emily had done it, and Emily cried so hard she got an asthma attack and had to go home. That was it. That was the worst thing I had ever done, but not anymore. If Luann and I camped out and shared our secrets now, I'd have to tell her that I had stolen a dog. What would she think about that, I wondered. I fell asleep that night to the soothing sound of the creek flowing over the rocks and winding through the dark woods somewhere outside of our car. The next day after school, I went straight on over to Carmela's. Toby had to study for his spelling test at the coffee shop. Mama thought I was trying out for the softball team like Luann and Liza and everybody else was doing, but I knew I shouldn't be lying to Mama, but I had to. I needed to find out if Carmela had gotten any money yet. When I got up on the porch, I could hear Carmela inside yelling, "Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Gertie." Then there was the bang of her phone slamming the telephone down hard. "Carmela?" I called through the screen door. I heard her shuffling up the hall. "It's me, Georgina." I squinted through the screen into the dark room. Carmela was standing there with her arms hanging limply by her sides and her hair hanging over her face. "Carmela?" She lifted her head real slow and looked at me. Her face was red and splotchy. I pushed the screen door open and stuck my head in. "Can I come in?" I said. She nodded. I stepped inside. The house kind of smelled like rotten food or something. "What's the matter?" I said. Carmela made her way over to her easy chair and dropped into it with a grunt. Her hair was damp with sweat sticking to her splashy cheeks. "I came home from work early just so I could call Gertie," she said. "I should have known better. She just flat out won't lend me any money." "Oh," I said. "I guess she doesn't remember the time I kept her kids while she was in the hospital, or the time I drove clear out to Gatesville in the middle of the night when her car broke down." She took a magazine off a pile on the coffee table and fanned herself. "I guess being sisters don't mean nothing to her," she said. "Well, what are you going to do?" She threw her hands up and let them fall on her knees with a slap. "Nothing I can do. If somebody brings Willie home, I'll just have to..." "Hey, wait a minute." She snapped her fingers and looked at me and grinned. "What?" I said. "I know who'll lend me the money," she said. "Who?" "My Uncle Haywood." She pushed herself up out of the chair and went over to the desk. She took a beat-up address book out of the drawer and flipped through the pages. "There," she jabbed her finger at the page. "Uncle Haywood, I'm going to call him." And so she did. She called her Uncle Haywood and told him the whole pitiful story. I'd lived every minute of it, but it was like to break my heart hearing that story all again. When she finished, she said, "Yes, sir," and then, "No, sir," and then, "Okay, I will." By the time she hung up, she was grinning at me and clapping her hands. "Is he going to lend you the money?" I asked. "He sure is." Carmela pushed the damp hair away from her face. "Now all I have to do is hope and pray somebody brings my Willie home," she said. Suddenly her smile drooped and her eyebrows squeezed together. "Do you think he's okay?" "Who?" "Willie," I said. "Do you think Willie's okay?" "Sure," I said. "Really?" I nodded. Carmela looked out the window. "I hope you're right," she said. "I bet he's trying to find his way home right now," I said. Carmela kept staring out the window. "I wonder where he is," she said. I felt my face burning. I was glad Carmela wasn't looking at me. "I bet he's, probably..." "I hope he's not scared," Carmela said. I shook my head. "Nah, he's not scared. I bet he isn't. You know, like I said before, if I had $1 million, I'd give every penny of it away just to get my Willie back." She nodded at me. "I really would," she added. I looked down at the dusty wooden floor. Did you get a chance to check those woods over there? Carmela said, jerking her head towards the window. Yeah, a little. I mean, me and Toby, we looked over there, but... Did you call his name? Carmela asked, and whistle? Oh, we sure did. I said, we called and... Georgina, Carmela put her hand on my shoulder. I'll give you that $500 and anything else you want if you find him. I nodded, but I couldn't make myself say anything. I knew if there was ever a time for me to say, Carmela, I know where Willie is, this was it. But I didn't. I knew that my silence was like stirring that. And the more I was stirring, the worse things were stinking. I'm going to stop right there, and then I'll start a new video for these last 2 chapters.